the park and El Malpais National Monument, its full name, no matter what is printed on my screen. It's just something I can't seem to break. So I hope you'll bear with me. They both mean the same thing, but I just don't want to be confusing. So that said, the natural and cultural histories of the monument are in many ways typical of the Southern Colorado Plateau, and the history of volcanism has added many unique aspects to both, and I will touch on just a few of these today. Okay. All right. Hopefully you can see that second screen with the images on it. A little background on the setting. El Malpais National Monument is located in the southeastern edge of the Colorado Plateau and southern boundary of the San Juan Basin. It was established on December 31, 1987 by an act of Congress to protect the rich diversity of volcanic features and extensive lava fields that are a product of one of the longest sequences of volcanic activity in the United States, from about 700,000 to 3,000 years ago. Collectively known as the Grants Lava Flow, the monument contains a succession of 8 lava flows, each creating new land surfaces and providing one of the best places in the continental United States to view young Hawaiian-style volcanic deposits. Mccartys Flow is the youngest, probably the best known, since you can also see it from the interstate. It dates to about 3,900 to 3,000 years ago. Its flow characteristics exhibit classic Hawaiian-style pohoihoi flows, such as in this image of a ropey textured surface, typical of pohoihoi flows. Hawaiian terms are applied to lava flow characteristics in El Malpais. Pohoihoi is a term that describes smooth or billowy, or in this case, ropey surfaces. Though Mccartys cinder cone has one of the finest examples of a stacked lava tube, that is one lava tube on top of another, the Mccartys flow that we see spread out across much of El Malpais is actually built up layer upon layer. The tubes seem to, at least from what we can see, not had a lot to do with the vast distribution of lava, but that again, we're looking at it from the 30,000 foot view. And in this case, this is an aerial view, not quite at 30,000, but you get the idea. This buildup of layer upon layer of lava has created what Larry Crumpler of the New Mexico Museum of Natural History and Science has called the Mccartys Plateau. We see some of it here today. And when Larry is talking about that, he's kind of referring to the southern end primarily of the Mccartys Flow, which if you have ever been there or tried to hike up it, it can seem very much like you're climbing up onto a plateau. In this slide are some close-up images of the Mccartys Flow, and just to give you some information on some of the features that characterize this Hawaiian-style billowy pohoihoi flow. Not that there isn't lots of out there, there certainly is. The upper left photo is a pressure ridge, which is produced by lateral forces pushing against the still plastic surface of cooling lava flow. The force causes the surface to bow upwards into an arch that is often broken by medial cracking. Over to the right is an image of an inflation pit formed when gas or lava that swells the crust and then escapes rapidly causes the surface to deflate or collapse. Elmos lava flows, let's see here, seem to be missing some, there we go. Elmos lava flows are characterized by unusual vegetation associations. For example, aspen and pinyon juniper grow together along flow margins. This is most apparent along the west side of El Malpais, which is of course a little bit higher than the east side, but it is still an unusual association, and particularly elevation for aspen. Unusual and sometimes stunted forms of vegetation are found on the flows and kapukas. Kapukas are another Hawaiian term that refers to an older landform completely surrounded by a younger one. The upper left image is of a pygmy ponderosa pine tree, firefighter in there for scale. The term pygmy is applied here to describe the diminutive or unusually small size of a population of ponderosa pines within a circumscribed area of the Mccartys Flow. Drought survivors are also among the vegetation icons of the lava flows of Malpais, particularly the Bandera Flow. In the lower left of this image is the Yoda tree that made national news when it died at 650 years old in about 2014. So that tree had been alive since at least 1406, possibly as early as 8350, according to Henry Gracino-Mayer, dendrochronologist. Nearby is another Douglas fir. Nearby the Yoda tree is another Douglas fir that's still living. This tree, also dated by the tree ring specialist by Henry Gracino-Mayer, came in with a birthday of AD 1062. So that tree, which is still alive, is about 960 years old. The rugged terrain of the lava fields can store a lot of water and provide soil conditions that support relatively diverse vegetation and forest that covers most of the lava flows, as we see here. I think that's something that is remarkable to some of our visitors when they cast their gaze out from the sandstone bluffs overlook and expecting to see a lava flow, which they do indeed see, but not expecting to see it entirely covered with a forest. Cave ice. Surface water can be plentiful on lava flows periodically during the monsoon, and runoff from higher elevations such as Cibolita Mesa on the east side, the Zuni Mountains to the north, and Elmos west side of the Continental Divide bring water to the lava fields, often in great torrents during the summer. The water flows into the lava fields and seems to disappear, flowing into the rock through fractures and faults, and is captured and retained in subterranean cavities. Winter precipitation also contributes significantly to the lava flow moisture reserves, much of it captured as perennial ice and formations, lava formations, or I should say ice formations. These images show a series of different kinds of caves we have at El Malpais, and of course, many of them with the ice features. The lower left is actually a surface tube, and it's dry, mostly dry all the time, pretty close to the surface. These others are much deeper and larger tubes. So we see ice stalagmites in one photograph. We see men crouched by an ice wall in another photo. A ranger collecting drip water from another ice floor, as well as an ice wall, and then sort of the characteristic view of what this lava tube looks like. Some of them are quite big, as Tom Wines noted in one of his publications, big enough to drive a train through in some cases. Perennial ice formations grow and shrink with drought conditions and climate variability. Some evidence suggests that at different times in the past, ice formations have grown large enough to nearly fill side passages and choke main passages in large tubes. Here we see some images, one actually from probably the 1970s, showing a pretty substantial ice floor, as well as an ice wall to what would be the right side of the individual. This ice formation has decreased significantly in the past 40 years and has been the subject of considerable study, particularly recently. The image below is of a very deep lava tube, part of the Rendija crater system, and it's large. It's an ice pool. It's like a skating rink. And that particular tube has a lot of ice in it that is quite thick. These large formations, well, let's see here. What do I have here? Yeah, ice cores from this pool, from the floor of this tube, was over 2 meters in depth. So quite significant. We were surprised at that. The ice is a considerable subsurface water deposit that influences the microclimate of the lava tubes and maintains air temperature between 28 and 34 degrees. The cool, moist air also contributes to the growth and survival of vegetation in the lava tubes and particular places in the lava tubes. These images provide a sample of the type of vegetation found in the lava tubes that benefit from the cool, moist environment. Roots from trees extend far below the lava surface in the photo to the left. On the right is a moss garden covering breakdown on the floor below a skylight or a collapsed ceiling. Moss gardens are common in the lava tubes at skylight openings and at the mouths of lava tubes. Some of the species of bryophytes that thrive in these gardens are the same species that are found in Arctic regions, possibly Pleistocene remnant species here. The ice impounded precipitation contained in Malpais lava tubes also was an important resource to indigenous people that explored and exploited the resources of the lava fields. The archaeology of Malpais is fairly typical of the Four Corners region. The highly visible archaeological landscape of the Pueblo people along the flow margins includes multi-room pueblos, field houses, petroglyphs, agricultural features, water impoundment features, and even a Chaco-style great house in Great Kiva, the Las Ventanas site. The association of these sites, and particularly Las Ventanas, with the distinctive lava flow landscape has produced equally distinctive sites and features that are indicative of the landscape and very much a part of the Pueblo world. The name Malpais comes from the Spanish explorers and translates literally to the bad country. The early colonizers viewed Malpais as an impediment, and settlement growth in the region was slow and sparse as a consequence. Indigenous perspectives on the lava flows varied somewhat from later immigrants, but exhibited similar deference to the extreme roughness and perceived cruelty of the landscape. An Elma employee from the Pueblo of Zuni once remarked that the landscape reminded him of something half-baked, not quite finished. That the lava flows are viewed as a significant landscape feature and even a force to be reckoned with is evident in traditional stories that seek to account for its presence as an entity distinct from its surroundings. In Acoma tradition, the lava is pitch flowing from the gambler's or Kobat's fire as an act of vengeance intended to flow over the landscape in order to even the score with his opponents. It is also the hardened blood from the slain giant Yetzo of Navajo legend. Death implied is a fitting theme for a landscape so harsh. But allegory aside, visitors to Malpais National Monument freely venture into the lava flows, as predecessors have done for centuries. So in this slide, I'm giving you a little bit of a background on some of the larger Pueblo sites just in the area, very general locations, and Malpais is the outline is shown in this image, and then to the slide or the image on the right of the screen is a drawing of the great house at Las Ventanas. Human occupation of the Elma Cibolita Mesa region on Elma's east side extends back to the Paleo-Indian period based on sparse but clear evidence from material culture, likely Folsom, in the Armeo Canyon area. So outside of Malpais, but in the general region, or actually in very close proximity. Subsequent hunter-gatherer adaptations from the early through the late Archaic period, so 8,000 through 1500 BC, also are documented by material culture primarily found on the Cretaceous-era sandstone mesas and ridges of Cibolita and Putney mesas along Elma's east side, as well as older lava fields and remnants of the Zuni Mountain Kapukas on Elma's west side. So that would be pieces of the Zuni Mountains extending into the lava flow on the north. Material cultural evidence of these early occupations in the lava fields is rather more circumstantial, however, represented by lithic materials most frequently associated with later Pueblo occupations. El Malpais' youngest lava flow from the Mccartys cinder cone was active 3,900 years ago, effectively covering probable evidence of early human use of older lava flows and features. Evidence of human activity on Mccartys Flow, and especially the earlier tube-bearing lava flows during the Pueblo cultural sequence, is extensive, however. The evidence for pre-ceramic use of the lava flows is limited. In this slide are images of a small ridgetop lithic scatter on Elmos west side that had a moderate to high density scatter of lithic debitage, primarily bifacial thinning flakes, and one early archaic J-point pictured on the left side. The tip of the dart is missing, and the proximal edges have deep parallel flake scars, and the base and stem are straight with evidence of grinding. It was made from a white, coarse-grained chert with a granular texture resembling quartzite. The map in this slide is of a late archaic site on Elmos' east side, off of the lava flow, but on the margin of the flow. The site is adjacent to the Las Ventanas Great House. In fact, it's incorporated within the site boundary and consists of 4 features and 2 artifact concentrations. It was a base camp dating to the end of the Armejo phase and the beginning of the Enmedio phase, or approximately 800 BC to 1 AD. A total of 107 flakes or pieces of flakestone shatter, 20 flakestone tools, and 12 pieces of groundstone also were documented. Until recently, relatively little was known and even less documented about the cultural resources of the interior of the lava flows beyond the Akamazuni Trail, a major route crossing the flow east to west and a popular NPS visitor use trail. Although the sites and potential trailhead markers had been identified along flow margins, Malpais lacked systematic survey and documentation of the trails and sites on the flows. Several studies in the last 10 years have increased our knowledge and understanding of the utilization and occupation of El Malpais lava flows. This slide shows many of the trails, here in red, that have been identified and documented through survey and mapping. One of the more illuminating studies that accentuates the four corners antecedents of the lava-influenced archaeology was conducted in 2010 by the nonprofit Archaeology Southwest. This is just a little sample of what we think is out there on the lava flow. We have a number of shapefiles that show what is possibly a more extensive trail system, but it has not been documented yet. So we're sticking with what we absolutely know in this case. The study, which was led by Paul Reed, focused on about 1,000 acres of the Mccartys Flow directly west of the Las Ventanas Great House. In the survey, 8 trails and 167 trail-related phenomena were documented, and that is basically in this area. This slide and the next slide show examples of trail features identified during Reed's study and other surveys on the lava flows. Stacked lava rock cairns, bridges, steps, tabular lava rock, paving and curbing, tabular sandstone, limestone, and pottery, Pueblo and pottery all mark trails and routes on the flow, as well as marking destinations and points of interest along the trail routes. Aids to navigation are important and potentially life-saving on the lava flows. All trail features at some level function as a navigation aid to keep you on track and to let you know you've arrived. Bridges are one such example. Several types have been identified, some with regularity. Saddle bridges, perhaps the most common, are rubble-filled ravines. They have the effect of sort of softening the landscape, making the traverse across a crevasse or a dip in the landscape a lot easier. Tabular basalt bridges span cracks and crevasses, also pictured in the lower right here. The most common pattern, and clearly an aid to navigation, are bridged cracks or rubble-filled cracks, which is the larger photo above the text. Unlike saddle bridges and tabular lava bridges that span crevasses, bridged cracks fill gaps and uneven surfaces, sometimes as little as 10 centimeters wide. Bridging such a small gap, or such many small gaps, would seem unnecessary for footing, but would serve to mark the trail. Like cairns, bridge cracks occur frequently, a clear indication that you're on the trail, perhaps on a particular trail. The scale of the trail network crisscrossing the lava flows appears to be substantial, though only a small percentage of it is currently documented. From a current level of information on Malpais trail networks, the trails that extend from the Great House locale exhibit a level of development and potentially maintenance that exceeds other trails in the monument, with a few exceptions. In his discussion of trail-related phenomenon from the 2010 survey, Paul Reed concluded that the trails west of Las Ventanas were not constructed solely as transportation corridors, but served to link ritual locales, including shrines and other points of importance on an ancient ceremonial landscape. He suggested that the scale of construction, its sometimes intricate style and detail, seemed to be the product of the Chaco mindset, seen at Chaco sites throughout the San Juan Basin and elsewhere. Scale of construction is one of the reasons for this conclusion, but also many of the Great House associated sites extend to points on the lava flow that linked these trails, including formal shrines, lava tube openings, and tower-like ridge-top cairns. These trail routes are intensively built with cairn markers, bridges, steps, curbing, edges, and tabular basalt paving. Objects such as sherds and tabular sandstone also mark tread and frequently mark what appear to be destinations such as cave openings and pits in the flow surface. In contrast, the Akamazuni Trail provides an east-west travel core predominantly cairn marked and lacking the detail and embellishment of the Great House network of trails. Destinations on the lava flows appear to be one of the points of trail construction for the Great House associated trails. Other destinations in Malpais lava flows lacking clear connection with the Great House associated trail have been studied recently. Returning for a moment to two significant resources of the lava fields introduced earlier, lava tubes and water in the form of ice, we have found that the trails lead to both, not surprisingly. This is pretty easy, really, because one is usually associated with the other, but not always. For example, cairn-marked trails crossing the middle of the monument lead to seemingly random cairns marking unknown destinations in the dry season, that is. In the monsoon, archaeologists noticed a shotgun pattern of cairns placed along trail routes, marking temporary surface water that a traveler in the know would take advantage of while making a journey, or simply to hike out and get a drink. This observation comes from an NPS survey and mapping effort conducted in July of 2014 that put two and two together following a particularly violent series of thunderstorms that filled very many cairn-marked pothole locations. Ice caves are the largest water reserves so far found within the lava flows. Like the potholes, people making the trek to these destinations would know both where and when to take advantage of the resource. The ice caves, however, represent a point-located resource much more like a spring. Ice may be abundant or sadly lacking at any given time, but mapping to this resource imprints the knowledge of location with the confidence in some level of success. Beginning in 2016, Malpais Natural Resource Branch staff embarked on a collaboration with researchers from the University of South Florida to collect and study paleoclimate data contained in Malpais perennial ice formations and bat guano. The guano, that is, the remains of insects preserved, would provide a climate proxy for various time periods. The results of that study and the ice core sampling are discussed in several papers, and I will only allude to them here. Of the 453 documented lava tubes in Malpais, 94 so far have seasonal and or perennial ice, or have had ice at one time in the past, as indicated by bathtub ring deposits of calcite along the floors and walls of the lava tubes. Virtually all of the caves have ice. Virtually all of the caves that have ice or have had ice at one time also contain archaeological deposits. The evidence found in both the twilight zone near entrances as well as deep in the tubes includes charcoal, charred wood and ash, torches, Puebloan ceramics, lithic artifacts, bone, and other material culture, along with physical modifications of natural surfaces to create deep wells and architectural features. The use of fire by pre-contact populations to melt ice in the lava tubes is documented in archaeological reports, cave surveys, and through ethnographic resources overviews of Elma. In the climate study with the University of South Florida researchers, 5 drought events are described that impacted the ancestral Puebloan society in Malpais between about AD 150 and 950. The study drew on data from an ice core containing radiocarbon-dated charcoal recovered from an ice deposit accumulated in a lava tube known as Cave 29. The results provided some of the earliest dated evidence of Puebloan use of the lava flows, in this case for ice harvesting around AD 150. 4 additional dates were obtained from the ice cores that suggest ice melting activities occurred over many hundreds of years, roughly from AD 150 through 1424. That's what is given in this table are the dates from the ice core, as well as some surface collection of twig-sized charcoal samples from this cave, which contains quite a lot of charcoal, almost industrial level of charcoal. It appears that the water collection corresponded with periods of drought for these dated sequences. Prior to the ice core sampling, a Cibola grayware sherd was exposed in an ice wall in Cave 29. The NPS monitored that ice regularly and the location of the sherd for several months prior to collection. A corner of the sherd had been documented nearly 2 years before, eroding from the melting ice. Ice loss from warmer summer temperatures in the cave exposed the artifact, enabling collection at the time of the core sampling. By this time, the entire 25 centimeter by 17 centimeter sherd was exposed. The discovery of the sherd stuck in the ice provided insight on the methods employed by pre-contact Puebloan people to obtain water from the cave ice. How it came to be lodged in the ice wall was evident from the position of the sherd in relation to the top of the ice wall and the residue coating on the interior of the surface. The residue covered the bowl-shaped interior of the sherd, which was found interior side up. The exterior corrugated surface was embedded in the ice, suggesting that it was used as a platform to support hot coals and or contain a small fire to heat the sherd. The curvature of the Oya's body sherd provided an excellent container for the heat source. Heat from the fire or coals heated the sherd and transferred that heat, melting the ice, presumably allowing the Puebloan people to collect the water from below the sherd. A Pueblo II period date of AD 1025 was obtained from the charcoal residue sample collected from the interior of the sherd. This corresponds to sort of the building, or I guess the increasing population density for the area around El Malpais and certainly along the margins of the lava flow. Located in the heart of the Western Pueblo world, Elmos archaeological landscape is typical of the Four Corners region, with its distinctive Puebloan period sites, including the 12th century Chaco-style Great House and Great Kiva of Las Ventanas. To the east lies the Cibolita Mesa area and the Pueblo of Acoma beyond. To the west are the lava fields of El Malpais. Further west is the Pueblo of Zuni. This region is part of the ancestral homeland of the Acoma and Zuni people and is culturally significant for archaeological resources and wild and scenic views. The peak occupation of El Malpais begins after AD 900 and continues to about 1100. The Las Ventanas community of sites includes the Great House and Great Kiva and dispersed smaller Pueblo sites dating to this period, all positioned along the eastern and northern margins of the lava flows, particularly the top of Putney Mesa overlooking the lava fields to the west. So I'm talking about basically this area all along here and extending well into here, up into this area and over into here. So I'm able to point to those locations because that's primarily where the work has been done. This is what we know to date. There may be more information on that, but the mesa top canyons bordering this eastern edge of Elmos lava flows were at the center of the region's emergent 9th through 13th century pre-contact Puebloan communities whose territory extended far into Elmos lava flow landscape to take advantage of resources within. And that concludes my description of Elmos lava flow landscape, the little piece that I pulled out today, dealing primarily with water, ice, and our trails. There are many other interesting facets to the archaeology of El Malpais, the Puebloan component. We are very interested in learning more about the early component of Pueblo I and Basket Maker, because we have a little bit of evidence, but it is scant at this point. And I think that much of it remains to be discovered there. There's also a very interesting historic use of the landscape as well that also involves trails, the enhancement of pre-contact trails, as well as the use of the lava tube caves and the ice. Thank you very much for paying attention to my program today. And if I don't blow it too badly, somehow I'll escape from this.
Well, thank you for coming. I think we have a couple questions if you have any time to answer them.
I do.
Oh, okay. So we have 3 right now. The first one is, can Las Ventanas be visited?
Yes, it is not. It is open to the public. There are no formal Park Service trails that go there, and it is not interpreted in any way other than, well, sometimes I'll give a talk out there, or our archaeologist will, and other people have done that as well. So Albuquerque Archaeological Society, recently we had a hike out there and did a talk. There have been many, but if you want to go on your own, you can. And when I say there are no formal trails out there, unfortunately, there are many social trails that lead to it. Yeah, it is not restricted. However, visiting that site, just because of the attention we've had, the unwanted attention we've had to archaeological sites in El Malpais, you may get a visit from a ranger if you just tell them who you are and what you're doing. No problem.
Okay. So we have 2 other questions. The first is, how found in the lava tubes and caves achieve such low temperature? When the temperature I'm sorry,
I'm
I'm
sorry.
breaking up there.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll try that again. How do the, hold on, I have to scroll up. How do the temperatures found in lava tubes and caves achieve such temperature when temperatures of lava surfaces are so high, particularly in the summer?
Yeah, great question. So the surface tubes, I had one image of a surface tube that was dry. And so the interior of that was probably, oh, I don't know, a meter or so below the surface. And, you know, it would provide some shade, but it actually could potentially get pretty warm in there. So that is, yeah, that's not a cool tube. The larger tubes, the ones I described as being subway tunnel size, that are fairly deep within the lava flow, those are the cold ones. And it is, in many cases, the ice formations that are in the perennial ice that has been in those caves for such a long time that contributes to not only the moist environment, but the temperature that's in there, maintaining that temperature. And it does not really fluctuate a whole lot between about 28 and 34. Some of the lava tubes tend to be always right around the 34 range, and others a little bit lower.
Okay. And then let's see, are most of the lithics local, or did they bring them in material from other areas?
Both. We get a lot of local lithics, a lot of Grants Ridge obsidian, a lot of the Zuni spotted chert, at all the sites. But we also have petrified wood. We get, oh geez, dacite, and that's really not, that's almost local too. So we have imports, and we have a lot of local material. Absolutely.
Okay, and we have a question about an intact bowl that was found about 4 years ago in one of the tubes. Can you tell us anything about that, such as approximately where it was found and whether it was Chaco related? I think I'd leave the location out.
Oh yeah, sure. Bowl. I'm not. That one is not ringing a bell. A bowl has been found. A couple of bowls have been found on the lava flow, but those have been more surface finds. There have been a number of oyas that have been found deep within some of the lava tubes. There was one. So I'll just describe this one, since I apologize that I'm kind of drawing a little bit of a blank on that. So I'll describe one that was actually found in the conservation area on BLM land. And this was, it made the news. In fact, a friend had reported it to me that it went around the world within about 24 hours on the internet, but a very large Oya, reserve black on white Oya that was huge. I mean, just huge, was found in one of the lava tubes. It was incredible. It looked like it had been made yesterday. That, through the process of consultation, was actually is now in the possession of the Pueblo of Acoma.
Nice. And we have one more question about obsidian.
Yes.
Is there any, and if so, from where?
Yes. So we haven't done a lot of studies on obsidian sourcing and really trying to remedy that situation. But what I can tell you is that we get the Grants Ridge obsidian at many of the sites. I mean, it's really pretty predominant throughout the sites in El Malpais. It's not always the best because of inclusions, but there is a variety of obsidian that comes from Horse Mesa. So this is also a local source that looks really good. It's real good stuff. When I first saw it, I thought, well, this is from Jemez, but I was corrected. I understand that we do get some also from Jemez, and I wouldn't be surprised if we get obsidian, even though we have local source from all over, just from having done obsidian studies in other places in the past. Well, Southern Arizona, sometimes the distances traveled, particularly for small obsidian, they call maricanites, can be considerable, hundreds of miles.
Great, thanks. And then, so I also wanted to mention to everybody that Steve is considering wanting to have some site watch folks come out to the El Malpais. And was it also potentially El Morro or just Malpais that you were interested in having monitored?
Well, I think I could discuss both of those. I hadn't really considered El Morro because it's small. However, one of the reasons to do site watch is to keep an eye on the resource, to report how impacts, whether anthropogenic or natural, how frequent they are and what those impacts are. And we're seeing more of that at El Morro, particularly of the anthropogenic variety. So yeah, I would entertain that. El Malpais is the biggest need, just because it's a large area. We cannot keep eyes on it. I have to say my natural resources staff do the best job of anyone in the park in terms of observation and keeping up with stuff, but that's a small group.
Right.
Glad they're interested in it.
All right. So we've mentioned the possibility that there may be an opportunity out there, and so we'll talk more about it later. But just so the stewards know.
That would be great. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. All right. So our next presenter is going to be. Oh, thank you for coming. I appreciate it so much. It's been a really interesting talk.
Well, thank you. And